Trust Yourself, episode 7. This episode is titled Awakening in Austin, and this is the story of my 5-month experience living in the magical city of Austin, Texas. So through a number of chance occurrences, I end up choosing Austin over Scottsdale. I was debating between the two. I visited Scottsdale and I had a great time. I met some really cool friends, Dan Coe, Devin, James Hansen. Went to a concert with Noah Zender, and it was a beautiful time, and it was a really great time. And I thought there was a high chance I'd move there. However, I also visited Austin about 3 days prior, and the energy in Austin was different. The energy in Austin was more alive. I didn't know how to see it like this at the time, but it was more spiritual. I didn't have the eyes to see that yet, but looking back, that's what it was. And I ended up choosing Austin, not because it felt more spiritual, not because I felt like a better vibe there, but in honesty, because it was easier. I had a friend, Jimmy Mackey, who offered me his apartment for 3.5, 4 months while he was going to Costa Rica. And that felt easier than like going apartment hunting in Scottsdale, and I had all these tours planned and I didn't end up going. And so through that split decision, I end up moving to Austin January 1st, 2024 of this year. So I move into Jimmy's apartment, and my friend Tyler from high school, also goes by Wiz of Copy or Red Scroll on Twitter. He's gonna move in with me around mid-January to late January. So I have the place to myself for a few weeks, which is incredible. And so I'm super busy to start the year. I launched my first cohort. That's a lot of perceived pressure at the time. Like 25 students in there. I'm giving group lectures, and I'm like the youngest person there, and everybody's older than me. And that was a bit much. And then combined, I'm a educational consultant at Cortex University. And so there's like 100 people every day in Telegram group chats asking for advice, and I'm super overwhelmed. But I don't know it yet. I'm okay with it. I'm grinding. Like, this is exactly what I would have wanted. However, I had a major wake-up call on January 6th, 2024. So I remember it was a Sunday, and I wanted to chill out. I wanted to relax. And so I decided to smoke a joint and watch the Bears game. The Chicago Bears were playing the Packers, last game of the season, my favorite team growing up. And I was like, I just want to chill out and watch this game. And so I smoke the joint and I start to watch the game, and I also am seeing all these messages flooding in on my phone, both from my own cohort, who I feel responsible for, and the educational consultant job at Cortex, the 100 of people messaging. And I start to get this wave of anxiety, and for the first time in my life, I had an anxiety attack. I had a panic attack for like 2 hours. And I kind of was watching it happen the whole time. Like, I didn't have an advanced spiritual awareness yet, but I was able to observe it happening as it was happening and not fully be in it to the point where I'm like, this was meant to happen, so there's something here for me. Like, I was put in this situation to learn a lesson, and I very much was. And the lesson was to come back onto the path of God, or come back onto the path of spirituality, because I'd fallen off of it. A few months back, when I did ayahuasca for the first time, and I was super into Ram Dass, and I thought I might go to India, and I had that LSD adventure, and I was feeling very tapped in, and I was very much on this spiritual path. And the funny paradox about ayahuasca is that it sent me back home to go monk mode and grind for the next 3 months. And so that grind and that focus on progress, work, business, money sent me off of the spiritual path, to the point where I wasn't listening to intuition, and I didn't know how to at the time, to the point where the universe had to slap me back into alignment with that anxiety attack. And it wasn't like I just got right back into alignment after that anxiety attack. It was a process over the next, 12 months up until now. It's December 17th of 2024. But those next 5 months in Austin became quite the adventure and quite the journey. So my friend Tyler moves in late January, and we basically grind for like a few months. Even while different spiritual openings were happening, we were still in the grind, and I launched 3 cohorts in 4 months. made like $70,000, and that was incredible for me at the time to be able to do that, and it gave me so much freedom, which I would use later. But we were just on the grind. We'd wake up at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. together, and we'd go outside. We'd do push-ups or jump squats to failure. Shout out Nick Sweeney for putting us onto that, Base Ethos. And we would do push-ups, jump squats to failure. Then we'd walk to the coffee shop. It was called Radio Coffee in Austin, Texas. Great fucking place. Shout out Fran. Just an amazing place. And we went to work for a few months, and we made a lot of progress in terms of the creator economy. But outside of the creator economy, I was beginning to open to different areas of life. So the second anxiety attack, or this wasn't an anxiety attack, but it was like a wake-up call, was there was another night I was smoking weed on my balcony, and I'm on Twitter, and I see this dude who I know lives in Austin, and I've been going to his run club, Danny Miranda. I see him post a questionnaire for his retreat. This is his first retreat, which I don't end up going to, but now it's in my awareness. And I see the questionnaire, and he's asking questions of, how often do you live in love? How at peace are you? How connected are you to God? What is your perspective on consciousness? And I'm seeing this smoking a joint, and I realized very deeply in that moment I had fallen off the spiritual path. Like, I'd really fallen off, and I hadn't brought my mind to it. I hadn't wanted to see it because I was so consumed with all the things that I thought were important, all the business, all the money, and I fell off the spiritual path. And seeing that survey started to open me up to it. And the reason I felt like I wanted to try something new in terms of awakening, I didn't know it at the time, healing, I could call it healing, was because I was still suffering. I was still suffering with anxiety of like all the overwhelm of all the work. I was forcing myself to do things. I had to drink 3-4 coffees a day, force myself to go to the gym. I was counting calories and restricting my calories, and just living life by force and constriction rather than openness, flow, and love. And inevitably, I would spiral out every so often. Maybe it was a binge eat episode once every 2 weeks, or maybe it was a masturbation like spree every 2 weeks, right? And these things were becoming less and less frequent because I was getting more into alignment, but they were still coming up, and I'd sometimes restrict for a month or 2 months, and then boom, like 1 week, I just like go off the rails. And I was in this cycle for so long, and I just was ready for it to be over, but I was still scared to take the step, right? I think that's something everybody can relate to, like knowing that you want to change, but being scared to take that step and take that leap. So the leap and the next step was getting onto a discovery call for one-on-one coaching with Danny Miranda. So I would know this dude. I might have went to his run club and met him once. I don't remember, but I got on a discovery call with him, and I believe he was charging $1,000 a month for his coaching, maybe $2,000. I don't remember, but it felt super expensive, and I was like, "Fuck, dude, I don't know." And he was so unattached. He's like, "Okay, no worries. Let me know if anything changes." And it was such an interesting sales call because he wasn't trying to sell me anything. He was just being there as a support if I wanted it. So that started to open me up. And I think about a week later, I had like another binge eating episode or something, and I was like, it's time to make a change. It's time to go ahead with this. And so I ended up starting to work with Danny, and that was a huge turning point. Being able to open up and share things with him that I hadn't shared with anybody in my life. And him being this empty, loving mirror without any judgment for anything I could have said. And so grateful for this dude coming into my life. He's like a brother to me now. Danny, I love you, bro. You have changed my life. My overall peace and happiness and connection to God, which at the start it was no connection to God. It was just, can I get out of my own way? which getting out of your own way is connecting to God. It ends up being the same thing. But starting to work with Danny it was a combination of the inner decision to say, I want to go change, I'm investing money, I'm doing this, let's go, with a loving space that could reflect things back to me and became like an older brother to me. So working with Danny was transformational. A few other things that began to open me were going to my first EDM concert with my neighbors. So here's where God works, and life is so serendipitous, and it's just incredible. So the same guy that I started ghostwriting for about 9 months earlier that gave me the ticket to go to Argentina, Sam Johnston was his name. I end up moving into the apartment across the way from him. Like, not even across the street, but in the same complex, like looking across. Like, you could see it from the front window, his house and my house, or apartment. And I end up meeting him and his girlfriend, wife, Claire, who I end up becoming like super good friends with, and I end up like integrating into their friend group. They were gracious enough to invite us in, Tyler and myself, and we would go on walks together, and they invited us to an EDM concert with a specific type of deep house music called Anjuna Beats, or Anjuna Deep. And so we were going to see a guy named Marsh, and I think this was like February 17th. And so I had never gone to a concert like this, and I was always, I wasn't a partier for the past few years. I was kind of a partier in high school. That was just like high school, drinking beers in the garage, but I never had like gone to a rave or a festival. This was completely new for me. And so I was nervous. I was pretty nervous. I was open, and I felt good because Tyler was going, and I felt good with the people I was going with. The whole group was so sweet. But I felt nervous, and I didn't know I was going to fit into that scene. It was a new experience. And so, being the open person I am, I decided I was going to take MDMA for the first time. And it was from a very trusted source, and it was super safe, and all those boxes were checked. So it wasn't a matter of safety, but it was a matter of, oh, what is this? I've never tried this. I'm very curious. I mean, I'd already tried ayahuasca and other things, so this felt like, okay, yeah, I'll try. So I decided to candy flip, which, if you don't know what that is, essentially it means you take MDMA and LSD together. So I took like, I don't know, half a tab or 3/4 of a tab of LSD and whatever the MDMA dosage was. And we get to the concert, and I start freaking out, actually. I start to like have a little bit of come-up anxiety. I'd heard about this come-up anxiety, but now I was experiencing it. And I remember turning to Tyler, who was sober at the time, and I said, bro, like, I don't think this is my scene. I think we should call Uber and leave. And then I think he was like, yo, just give it a minute. I was like, okay, fine. And so once that happened, once I admitted I didn't feel good, and he gave me the reassurance, he's like, wait for a minute. Then Sam called me into the middle of the rave, and he's like, come in. So me and Tyler go in. And this is kind of where things shift and the magic starts to happen. So I'm on the left of Sam. Sam's to my right, and there's another girl in our group who I didn't know yet. I'm going to leave her name out, but there was another girl who I didn't know, but she was in our group. And so, for whatever reason, oh no, how did it go? Oh, it was Sam to my left, me in the middle, girl to the right. And I'm kind of like, I'm starting to like bop my head, but I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And this girl grabs me by the shoulders, and she's like, let's switch, you're going to be my masculine protector. And boom, that completely shifted everything for me. Like, now I had a sense of purpose, and at this point I had no idea how to get into my feminine energy. I had no idea how to flow or surrender or be open. But now she said, you're going to be my masculine protector. That gave me a sense of like masculine purpose. And now I felt like, okay, cool. This is my duty. This is why I'm here. And this was the first time I truly felt like energetics, like energy beneath personality, beneath the thinking mind, like frequency. And what I felt was I was so strong in my yang energy. I was so strong in my order, my masculine. And she was the most open, free-flowing spirit I'd seen up to that point in her feminine, in her yin energy. And so I'm kind of like holding this space, and there's clearly this like magnetic loop, energetic loop around us, where like I'm kind of holding the space and she's dancing off of it. And I never had seen somebody move so freely, and I was like just like entranced by the free-flowing feminine spirit. Why? Because that was something I was looking to unlock in myself, but I didn't know it yet. But that was the subconscious reason I always would turn to weed, I'd always turn to video games, I'd always turn to whatever it was. Because the feminine inside of myself was repressed. And I saw her living it out and embodying it, and I didn't make all these connections at the time, but looking back I can see it. But I was just amazed by her freedom. And we didn't say really anything the whole time, but towards the end, or maybe it was in the middle, I asked her, I'm like, did you take something? Like, are you on MDMA? And she's like, no, you don't have to take anything. And that blew my mind even more. Like, somebody could move that freely without taking anything. I then very much realized this on Unlock It, like a few months later. But at that time, that just blew my mind. And I was so into the music. I loved the music. I wasn't dancing really, but I was just like so into it. I hadn't unlocked dancing yet. That was coming. So that concert ends, and I remember Tyler and I go home, and it's like 4 a.m. and all I want to do is listen to music. And I'm just in my bed with the noise-canceling AirPods on, listening to more and more Marsh, more and more EDM, and I'm starting to just love that frequency. And I don't sleep at all, but I feel great. And like the next day we go to Sun Life, which is like this great smoothie bowl place in Austin, and Kuya, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I feel at home. This feels like family. I have so much love in my heart. That's what it felt like too, the MDMA. It felt like it was helping me feel that love in my heart, which I hadn't felt for years and years and years. So after that, there is another concert that happens about a month later, and there ends up being 2 nights in a row of this concert. The first night, I end up taking MDMA again, and now I'm much more comfortable and confident. And so I start to actually dance for the first time. I start to dance, and it starts to come out of me. I start to, like, my feet are moving, and I'm like letting myself do it. And I remember at one point I went in the back of Concourse, which is this like music venue in Austin, and there was these people breakdancing, and I started breakdancing with them. And I was like, holy shit, like I've always known I could do this, but like I never like let it out. And it clicked in my mind that like this was in my genes, because my dad could breakdance like crazy. He still can. He's super athletic. But I was like, I never had the internal freedom to be able to do it. I was always judging myself way too much. But at this concert, I unlocked it. And so twice, MDMA was able to kind of unlock new levels of authenticity and openness and freedom in me. And then the second night at that concert was even more magical, because that same level of freedom and love and playfulness and openness and expression and feminine energy, to be honest, it happened without MDMA. It happened, I was just smoking weed, which I equate to like, it's not sober, but it's just smoking weed. It's not taking MDMA. And a big download I had there was the same girl who I was dancing with the first night. She ended up dancing with another dude, or like he was kind of holding the masculine space for her. And what I realized is, when you dance with a girl, you hold down the masculine energy. But when you dance with yourself, you dance between the energies within yourself. And I was figuring that out within myself. And that second night was just such a fun story, because my friend and I, we ended up buying the wrong concert tickets, and we went on this adventure for 3 hours outside the music studio or the music venue, and like talking to all these random people. It was like the first time I ever surrendered really to life. We were completely surrendered. Like, we don't know what's going to happen for the next 3 hours. We would get attached. We would get attached to staying, and then we'd get attached to leaving, and then we'd get attached to staying, leaving, and it was this crazy dance. And we end up just being graciously let in by the venue people, just because they saw us staying there for 3 hours and really wanting to go, and they let us in. And we actually used a mental model from Warren Buffett to get in, and the mental model was invert everything, always invert. And so we used the mental model of what would it look like if we didn't get in, like what would have to happen for us to not get in. And we were like, okay, we wouldn't talk to anybody, we wouldn't ask, we wouldn't talk to the concourse venue people, and we'd probably just sit here on our phones and just hope something showed up. And so we started just talking to everybody from that frame of mind and that mindset. And we took that mindset into our cohort launch, which was funny, parallel, and we ended up doing like a 40K cohort launch, which was amazing for the time. So that was my first few experiences dancing and going to raves and concert, which was a big opening for me. The next big opening was Danny Miranda's retreat in April. So I didn't sign up for the first one because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready internally, but I started to see the results people were getting, the transformations, the testimonials, and I had been working with Danny now for a month, one-on-one, which had been super powerful, and I was like, I'm ready for the retreat. And the retreat was super powerful. It was super fucking powerful. And there was no plant medicine involved too, which was a big opening for me too. Like, oh, I could have deep internal transformation without plant medicine. So I remember at Danny's retreat, a few really big things were, one, meditating for 60 minutes. I hadn't ever done that before, but we did it a few times, and now I love doing that. Like, it's one of my favorite times. Something else, Danny had a couple of great activities planned to help bring subconscious blocks up to the surface, and one of them was writing a letter to our parents, and like, what did we deeply want to say? And so through these exercises, I discovered I had a ton of buried deep down resentment for my dad, which had been driving my need to perform, my need to be good enough, my need to be successful, whatever it was, my whole life, and not feeling like I was good enough. And so that came up during the retreat, and there was another guy there who had a very similar experience with his father, and he ended up reading his letter out loud, and I was debating it at the time in front of the group, and he was crying. And this was the first time I tapped into somebody else's energy field like this. I felt everything he was feeling. I was so fucking in it. I was so present. I was crying. I felt for him so deeply. And it was when I really realized, like, bro, I'm so empathetic. Like, I can really feel. And I had just been numbing myself from feeling my whole life. I didn't realize that until probably like a month ago now. But I feel everything so deeply. And most of the things I had done, whether it be nicotine, vapes, coffee, weed, music, Xbox, business, work, writing, progress, text messages, Snapchat, all of it. It was all done to numb feeling because I didn't want to feel the negative emotions. But now I realize it's just a wave. You can ride it and you can still be at peace at the bottom or at the top. But I didn't know it at the time. And so I was so connected to this guy's energy, feeling everything he was feeling, and I ended up reading my letter, and I was crying my eyes out. I was bawling. It was so liberating, and so much came up, and so much came out, and I felt so much more embodied after that and confident. And the last piece, too, was Danny did a great activity called the Love Circle at the end. And so the Love Circle was where basically every member of the retreat would go sit in the middle of the circle of the other guys, and all other 12 guys would go reflect things to that guy that they loved about them. And, you know, being on both sides of that was really fucking great, to be able to, like, tell somebody exactly what you see in them that maybe they never had heard their whole life. Like, dude, you're fucking strong. You're a warrior. I remember saying that to somebody, and him feeling it so deeply, and I was like, that's so beautiful. And I had some really great things reflected to me that, like, boosted my confidence, and people were like, you have Prince energy, you're about to become a king, you just don't know it yet, you just, like, you're hung up on the fact you're 22, just step into it, drop all that, like, you have such a huge heart, you're meant to be a leader. So that was so great to get those reflections from 12 men that were peers, and a lot of them being older than me, men I was looking up to. So Danny's retreat was super transformational, and after his retreat, I ended up calling my dad right away, and we had like a 45 minute to an hour conversation of me basically telling him what came up at the retreat, and that, you know, despite all of it, all the resentment that was there in childhood, like, I completely forgive him. I know he was doing his best, and I have so much empathy for him, and I love him so much. And after that moment, it seemed like we got on the level of peers officially. Like, he's always my dad, but in a way, like brothers too. Like, I see him and he sees me in a different way. So the big thing that Danny taught me in life was tell the truth. Tell the fucking truth. And, you know, every time I tell the truth, despite not wanting to tell the truth, this video series sometimes is that example. New spaces opened up inside of me for new things to come into my life, and a new level of freedom and realization is unlocked. So grateful for Danny, and so grateful for that retreat. Two more pretty profound things happened in Austin this summer. So around April, I ended up moving into my own place. Jimmy came back, Tyler moved out, I moved into my own place. And I end up getting curious about MDMA therapy. So I had talked to friends about this after the concerts, and, like, you know, a little bit about, like, my heart opening to love, and I hadn't been open in so long, and, like, I'd be curious to experiment with this and see what it's all about. And so I end up doing a private MDMA session with a really good friend, a really trusted friend. And it is, up to that point, the most expansive, liberating moment of my life. I basically have the internal freedom unlocked, the level of enlightenment unlocked in that moment, where I realized I could do whatever the fuck I want. And I have a 4-hour voice note recording of me in this experience. And I remember opening up and singing, which, like, I had never done, and now I'm singing all the time out here. All day I'm singing. I started the last video singing a little bit. You know, doing it in public is still something I could work through and something I could open up. But I started singing, and I basically had the idea. I hadn't got any tattoos yet. I was like, I could get the fucking tattoos. I can go travel this summer. I could just go write and be a nomad. I can play music. I can start to DJ. I can do whatever the fuck I want, and nobody can tell me what to do. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, as long as I'm happy and as long as I'm expressing myself. That's all that matters. And that just gave me so much freedom and so much love and so much clarity. And it was extremely transformational. Extremely transformational. And I learned what was happening is, like, on the Hawkins scale of consciousness, we basically are getting into that level of 540, that level, or 560, that level of love, bliss, joy, ecstasy. And what would it be like to live in that level of infinite possibility? And now, I don't know what I'm calibrating at. I could calibrate myself, but intuitively what came up is like 533. And so it's interesting to think now, back to that MDMA session, when I was probably at 560, right? Because all the lower energy levels are blocked off. That's what the drug, that's what the molecule is doing. In that state of 560, I was like, I'm going to be a fucking DJ. I'm going to write books. I'm going to go do all this. And I'm still there. But there's like a smidge of, I think it's a smidge of anxiety that is still present, that I'm going to be releasing maybe by the end of this trip. There's still a little bit of pride. There's still anger. There's still grief. Maybe, I don't know if there's grief. There might be a little bit of grief. Yeah, there might be grief. There is some shame and there's some guilt. So there are things at all the lower energy levels on that scale of consciousness. And I've been told by astrologers in the past week, like, you're meant to play music for people. You're meant to bridge spirituality and partying. And I feel my heart wanting to open right now. I actually feel it right now. Like, I'm completely okay. I can do whatever I want. I'm recording a fucking video on the ocean in Hawaii with my back on a tree. What? What a blessing. I probably just raised the point from that realization. So after my own MDMA journey, I end up co-facilitating, kind of holding space for another friend to do an MDMA journey that I told him about my experience. And so he ended up doing a session with my friend, and I was there to kind of hold the masculine space, and he had a very different experience than me. It was challenging, it was up and down, it was a roller coaster, and it was good for me to see that because mine was pretty much just pure ecstatic bliss, and I think I'm lucky and fortunate enough to not have super deep traumas in this lifetime. I think I'm blessed for that. Whatever reason, I think I'm blessed. Now, there was deep things that have come up post my MDMA session with ayahuasca and things, which we'll get into in a few videos. But with my friend, I felt so in my purpose, just being there. Like, I didn't have to do anything. I just had to hold the space. And I remember this was like my first maybe deeply spiritual experience without being on any type of drug or medicine. Was Claire, I wasn't going to say her name, but I said her name. Whatever, it's okay. It was meant to come out. It's interesting. My friend who was facilitating the session said a few prayers and called in a few spirits. And she asked me if I wanted to call anything in. And I remember, I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And I just got clear for a second. And I called in the spirit of the Divine Masculine to watch over and protect my friend during this journey. And I felt this electricity light up my whole body like I never had felt before. It felt like, boom, I'm a channel. It felt like the first time I was a channel. And it was calling in that divinity, that Divine Masculine presence. And I was so tired at this point. I remember I'd been so low on sleep. I'd been running around. I was in a new romantic kind of relationship with this much older woman, like a 42-year-old woman. And that was like super toxic, and a bunch of old patterns were being revealed there. And I had just done my own MDMA session, and then Danny's retreat was previous, and then now I'm holding space for an MDMA session. My cohort is still going on with 30 people, and I have one-on-one calls. My parents are going to visit town in a few days, and I'm going to another group plant medicine journey the next day. So I remember going to this medicine journey. This was Friday, May 10th. And so the context here is my parents are going to be coming the next day, Saturday, but I'm going to this medicine journey that life kind of brought in my awareness through Danny, through a friend, and I decided to surrender and say yes. At this point, I was so open to surrendering and saying yes. And so this medicine journey, I have probably said this a handful of times in the series, but this was my true first spiritual awakening, actual awakening of consciousness experience. So, the context of this group medicine journey is, it's at a dude's house. There's 3 facilitators. There's 15 adults, and I was 22. The second youngest person there was 42, and everybody was 42 to 75, which was really interesting for me to be with older generations in that context. So the context was there's 15 adults there, there's mattresses, blow-up mattresses all around the floor. It's such a wild thing, but it was so beautiful. And the facilitators intuitively give you what they feel you need. So you don't know what type of plant medicine you're taking. And they give you intuitively what you feel you need based on your responses to questions, how you carry yourself, your experience with plant medicine, etc. So for the first hour or so of this journey, something's coming up for some reason, but the first hour or so of this journey, I learned later I was on more heart openers like Kana and Esfras, and similar to MDMA, and I remember just dropping in super deep and connecting on a very peer-to-peer human level with all these people that were my parents' generation or my grandparents' generation. And for the first time, I saw 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds as children, as people like me, as human beings, rather than like they're older than me, they're wiser, they know, we're different. It became crystal clear we're all humans and like we're just peers, we're just one. The we're just one experience comes later this night. So I'm having this cool experience, my heart's open, I'm talking to people, and the main facilitator says to me, he looks at me, he's like, I think you're ready for a chocolate. You ready for a chocolate? And I was like, sure. This is me being open, adventurous, Sagittarius rising. And I'm like, sure, let's do it. So the chocolate, I find out later, is a special blend of psilocybin and ayahuasca that doesn't make you purge. And it's brewed in a specific way for Westerners that don't have like the same community, tribe, upbringing. So it's not as intense of a purging experience for them. So I end up eating a chocolate, and I might end up eating 2 chocolates. I don't remember, because this is where it gets fucking crazy. I remember being in the kitchen. So there became like 2 little groups. There was a big cuddle puddle happening outside, and there was a smaller, more intimate group in the kitchen. And the intimate group in the kitchen was like the 3 main facilitators, and then 2 or 3 of us that seemed to be like going deeper for whatever reason. And I remember we're sitting in the kitchen, and I'm talking to my guy, the facilitator, legend. I love this guy. I'm not going to use his name right now. Maybe later. You'll meet him someday. Probably through me, you'll meet him. If you come to my retreat, you'll meet him. So I'm talking to this guy and another dude named Omer, in the kitchen. And we're talking about past lives. And I'm like, I just have never been able to get behind the concept of past lives. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And what he said gave me this Satori moment, this sudden awakening, this opening of consciousness, where this dude is just in the corner eating potato chips. And he so casually says, oh, maybe it's just your first time here. And I didn't take that as like, this is my first incarnation. That's not what sent me to the floor. Like, literally, I collapsed on the floor. I fell over on the kitchen floor, and I stayed on the kitchen floor for like 2 to 3 hours, having an ego death, like contemplating everything, seeing my ego outside of myself, like being the awareness behind the ego and looking at it. And what sent me to the floor was when he said, maybe it's your first time here, the word here collapsed time and space into this infinite now, this infinite present moment that all the spiritual teachers, all the mystics, all the yogis, the quantum physicists, they all talk about. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. I had read this book, but I never experienced it. Non-duality, I'd heard about it from David Hawkins. There's no separation, there's no other, there's just one. Everything shifted in that moment. Everything shifted. And at that time, I was looking into this guy's eyes, and I realized I was looking into my own eyes. Because I was not the personality Jack that was looking into the personality of the facilitator. I was the awareness behind it, watching our mutual awareness share an experience in consciousness. And it was the first time I ever experienced that non-dual state of perception. And it scared the fuck out of me. Well, it was cool. I was curious, but I was also scared. And so I go to the floor, and I end up being on the floor for like 2 hours. And I remember somebody, like this girl walked in, she's like, is Jack okay? Such a sweet girl. And the facilitator dude is like, oh yeah, he's just in something I like to call contemplation. And he was like just laughing, eating potato chips the whole time. And the funny thing about that whole experience was him holding that space. He didn't have to be serious. Him holding the space with just like a chill vibe, just sitting there on the ground with me eating potato chips. Super chill. That was so magical. I'm so grateful for that moment. And so for the next 2 hours, I end up just seeing all my blind spots so clearly. Like, oh, I'm so addicted to validation, and that's why I check my Twitter likes every time. Can I live and survive without tweeting and getting attention I'm so anxious about money and I need success and status to feel okay. Oh, I don't love myself unless I'm performing or whatever it is. I saw all these things so clearly. And I ended up going into the bathroom and having like an hour-long contemplation, looking at myself in the mirror, looking at myself and realizing, oh, the personality Jack is actually an illusion and it's not actually real on a certain level of consciousness. And I'm just like, this is crazy. And I get the feeling like I'm curious to go deeper. I feel like this was just a glimpse. This was just the crack. I'm curious to go deeper, even though I was scared. And the big insight I had was, can I approach fear? Can I approach the unknown with curiosity? And that's my life philosophy. Can I approach the unknown with curiosity? So I end up going back into like the cuddle puddle, and that was really beautiful. Like after that deep experience and like crazy awareness, going back and like cuddling with the whole group and everybody's hearts open, and I'm laying on this beautiful woman's lap and chest, and it was so cute. And I felt so safe and so at home. And so the next day, I get driven back to a hotel, and I'm sitting there with Omer, and we're having a deep talk. And my parents come. My parents and my sister come to visit me in Austin that next day. So we're at the hotel, and I'm like still so fucking tapped in. And like I'm seeing them in a completely different light. I'm seeing them as peers. I'm seeing them as equals. I'm seeing them as brothers and sisters. And my dad even sensed it. My dad's super intuitive, and he's like, "You're still in that state, aren't you? Something's still there." I'm like, "I'm permanently in this state." I wasn't permanently in that state. I fell back a little bit, of course, as one does. But those next 4 or 5 days in Austin with the family were just like a great way to end out that chapter. They met a bunch of my friends. They met my friend Nick Dagler. They met Baxter. They met Nick and Jack Sweeney. They met Claire. And they didn't meet Sam, but they met Claire. And it was so cool to kind of bring them into that world. And so I end up, these last few weeks in Austin, I've been getting the hit. This is around the medicine journey. I want to go be adventurous and travel this summer. That kind of came from the MDMA journey. It came from the group medicine journey. I was like, I want to go be adventurous, be a free-flowing solo traveler and backpack by myself this time, like I did 2 summers ago, but this time as a new person from a new place, by myself, not with a friend. So I don't know where to go, and I'm thinking I'll go to Europe again, but then that starts to not make sense. So I start asking myself, what do I really want this summer? And it started to become clear. I want to deepen my meditation, I want to deepen my yoga, and I want to deepen my spirituality. And so it came to me in a meditation or in a dream that I should go to Southeast Asia instead of Europe. And so I'm like, okay, let's see. Like, I don't know where to go. I'm kind of doing some research, but I start looking for signs. I don't start looking for signs yet. Now I'm like fully living by signs. That's how I picked this tree. There was a plant pointing me here, basically. Funny enough. And that's how I recorded this whole series and everything. But I start picking up on signs a little bit at the time. So I'm at one of my favorite coffee shops, and there's a book about Thailand. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Then somebody sends me an article on Twitter about a place called Chiang Mai, Thailand. So I'm like, that's interesting. Now it's twice. Okay, I don't know. I'm still looking around. I don't know where to go yet. Maybe I'll go to Bali. Maybe I'll go to Malaysia. Maybe I'll go to India. I don't know. Philippines. And the third sign was I was in an Uber, and the Uber driver told me he lived in Chiang Mai for a few years. And in that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm trusting this. I'm going to trust it and follow the sign. And so I end up booking a one-way flight to Chiang Mai. I had a tweet. I put this out. One-way flight to Chiang Mai, one backpack, no plans, no return ticket home. Let's see what life has in store. And so I end up going home to Illinois for about 2-3 weeks. And on around, again, June 13th, magical June 13th. June 13th, 2025 is going to be special. Be on the lookout. Something's happening in Austin, Texas. We're raising collective consciousness with frequency and quantum healing. Transcendence. Be on the lookout. Follow Transcendence on Twitter. It's my life's work. And it's not me doing any of it. It's me listening to God and consciousness. But June 13th this year, we'll say, June 13th, 2024, I get on the plane to Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I have 5 days at a hostel book. And I'm getting chills. My heart is opening thinking about it. The most adventurous, magical, heartful summer of my life. I would never be the same. So the story of Thailand and my Asia adventures this summer, which I've wrote a lot about, but now I'm going to put it into words, into video. That'll be the next video. So I hope you like this scene. I really enjoyed recording this out here. I feel super grateful. I want to just sit in it for a minute. You can sit in it for a minute. Just let your mind be at peace for a second. Thank you, God. Thank you, Hawaii. Thank you, consciousness, life, earth, Hawaii. I love you so much. I love you so much if you watch this. And I'm so excited to see you in the next video. We'll talk soon. Peace. Woo.